Salutations, Legion of Doom. Welcome to Podcast The Storm, where socially awkward outcasts, crazy weirdos, and all around nerds convene to talk and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co-host, the Nerdy Occultist, aka the Authenticator, Dalton L. Mortimer.
Hello, folks. Sorry we're a couple minutes behind schedule. Things happened.
Yeah, that's on me. Personal stuff. Don't worry about it. We're good. And yeah, I'm your host / time I wannabe, the Brainstorm Pop Culture. How's everyone doing tonight? I hope everyone's had a good week so far. I mean, me and Dalton have kind of said it. Ours are relatively good comparatively. I mean,
Yeah, they've been mostly just randomly uneventful for the last few ones. So
yeah. Speaking of which, not really much in terms of news for us really happened, to be fair, but we got some things. Mainly Dalton. I contributed one thing.
And we would subject ourselves to the torrent of stupid, but we decided we need a week in between the loaded mess that was last week and that whole shenanigans. So
yeah, like I said, this actually might be a relatively short stream. Not entirely sure. That just depends on us, to be honest. Well,
yeah.
Dalton, to be fair, like for the first two.
To be fair, if I remember correctly, the main reason you asked me to co-host originally was because you weren't comfortable doing much of the talking. So you get what you paid for.
Well, also in my defense, these two articles that you sent, I'm sure you have a lot to say because you're the one who sent them. Yeah. Okay. Let me share here. One sec. Okay. It's from bleedingcool.com. Been a very long time since we covered anything of theirs. This is written by Rich Johnson.
Fuck you, Rich. So much fuck you.
Do you not read these before, like you send them, or like do a skim of them?
No. I knew it was Rich. He just automatically deserves a fuck you because I'm still mad about the DC Vertigo closing down is the anti-SJW's fault because reasons derp article. Fuck you, Rich.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so this is DC Comics puts a capital insurrectionist in Suicide Squad. I did a quick read of this when Dalton sent it the first time, just because I wanted to like get why he sent this. I mean, it's a Rich Johnson Bleeding Cool article, obviously, but you know, and the character, the one they mentioned, and like there are going to be screenshots of the comic here, but it's a character I'm vaguely familiar with. We'll get more into it as we get into the article, obviously. So, yeah, this was posted July 6th, 2021. Okay, Suicide Squad, Get Joker by Brian Azzarello, Alex Maleev, and Matt Hollingsworth. If I said the names wrong, I'm sorry. Is a 3-part series starting in August and is being released alongside Suicide Squad movie directed by James Gunn. I feel bad for the movie.
Well, I mean, I feel bad more for the comics because by rights, every time a comic book movie releases, it should be a massive boon to whichever character the movie is about in the comics. But it seems like Marvel and DC both get it in their heads to sabotage themselves because they want to morally grandstand about shit.
Right. Um, to be fair, I kind of stopped collecting DC comics a long time ago because nothing they DC and Marvel comics. I've mentioned this many times before. Is that it's like nothing is really interested me anymore with them. Marvel's more obvious than DC, to be fair, but
But I mean, the problem is it used to be back in the old days of original CG, original comic create, DC was kicking Marvel's ass. And for some reason, not content with soundly spanking Marvel like the two big toddlers they were, DC decided to get into it themselves because morality, and therefore dragged themselves down. And there seems to be a trend of these books recently where the characters and the meta discussion that the writers want to have are basically interchangeable and irrelevant to each other, um, as long as they get to virtue signal. Like you had the one from a couple of months ago, the Captain America comic, where Red Skull was spouting Jordan Peterson talking points. Then you had the one from a couple of weeks ago where Captain America comes out against the concept of the American dream while simultaneously being replaced by a two-bit kid in a homeless shelter. Not even lying. And now you've got, and now you, yeah. Go ahead.
no, I remember that character. Like we covered him like really.
Yeah, when they first announced that they were gonna do him, they did a whole press release thing about it. But yep, they did it, and it's just as odd and awkward as you would imagine. Although to be fair, um, the main the main shock value of that issue was not that character. I actually thought of all of the things that went wrong with that story, he was not the worst of them. The thing that most people took exception to was Captain Freaking America being like, the American dream is um is partially a lie, and some people feel just randomly entitled to it because reasons.
Right. See, a part
Yeah.
of me can understand that if it's in the hands of a good writer, but I don't. Who's the writer for that comic? I forget.
Um,
I don't think it's Ta-Nehisi Coates because that guy got off.
no, it's not. It's not Coates. It's Chris Cantwell, I think.
I have no idea who that is.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. Apart from, I think he's the guy who wrote the aforementioned Captain America. But anyway, point being, not to be outdone at completely and utterly destroying themselves for moral reasons. DC saw those two Captain America stories and then made this as their version of it, basically.
Huh. I just looked him up. Anyway, no, that's for later.
Yeah.
Not that.
The cut and thrust of that one was that he didn't even make Cap sound like Cap. He made him sound like a lecturing professor most of the time.
Right. Well, okay. Look, I can understand, and like I've heard arguments on like both sides of that. Like, okay, we're going on a tangent here. Just it's bound to happen with Captain America. And I've written some characters based off Captain America. To be honest, I'm just like I've done research on Captain America as much. Well, to be fair, I've done more research on Superman, but again, besides the point. But yeah, America. Yeah, okay. He's not. I can understand him questioning things about like American culture when it becomes quote unquote problematic on an actual legit degree.
Right.
You know, abuse of power, corruption, legit.
Basically, drawing the distinction between the American culture and the American government.
Yeah, yeah. Um, the whole American Dream thing, I could kind of understand, but if it's more of how it's framed, you know?
Yeah. And in the context of the comic, it was mostly calling out quote unquote white people
Okay.
for being entitled.
If they were like legit elitist assholes, which there are, no one's gonna deny that fact.
Yeah, but not en masse, like
Yeah,
not as an entire category.
right. The American Dream, how I've always kind of seen how kind of American, like, is my opinion. I'm not trying to legit. I don't know if it's like legit for Captain America or not. But he fights for the American dream as what it should be. You know, he fights for like, yeah, he fights for the American dream in its purest sense.
And this is the other problem. I understand that like the American dream means different things to different people.
Mm-hmm.
Like everyone has a different idea of what they mean when they say the term American dream. Like for me, the American dream or what makes America great is freedom of expression. That to me is what differentiates America from other countries, even other liberal democracies like the UK and so forth, because we have it enshrined in law directly and on purpose that things like the freedom of expression, the freedom of the press, the freedom of association, all those things are enshrined in law, etc. Um, the with the English, it's always kind of been a tangential implication of a lot of what they have enshrined in law, the English common law, the Magna Carta, and all that stuff. But there's gray areas and wiggle rooms that there aren't when it comes to um, the American way of doing things.
Oh, right. Plus, they're a parliamentary government with a monarchy figurehead.
Well, yeah, but
Face.
I think everyone at this point knows damn well that the Queen is the legacy of the monarchy is basically just there as a symbolic cultural gesture, which
Right.
I'm fine with.
Yeah.
But like,
It's still, honestly, still America. I mean, let's be honest. Comparatively, America's probably a better country.
well, it's just from the fact that and to be honest with you, the British Empire kind of did this to themselves because rather because the English at one point were basically using um, America as a dumping ground for all the people we don't want to deal with right now, and then they went and did the same thing with Australia not so many years later, and so it's kind of natural that we would all be, relatively speaking, the uncouth, untoward rabble rousers that they would kick out of the party. And then, of course, we would retaliate by, not, we throw boxes of tea in your general direction.
Right.
Paraphrasing Monty Python.
Right. By the way, if anyone has seen that movie that came out on 4th of July, I think it's called America: The Motion Picture. Let us know. Like, I'm curious about checking it out because it's like a really funny thing to me.
Mm-hmm. I hadn't heard of it until just now, so I don't know one way or the other if it's any good or not. But anyway, back to my point. My main point is, to someone like me, freedom of expression is the highest and of course liberty in general, but in particular freedom of expression, is the highest virtue of America.
Right.
To someone
Um,
like Englentine, and he's talked to me about this and said his piece about it many times as well. He kind of sees the notion of upward mobility as what he finds the American dream to be. And then for some people, it's the um, sort of idyllic suburban white picket fence, um, the two kids, the mother, father, sister, daughter, etc. Sister, brother, etc. That kind of thing is what I think a lot of people who haven't really given it much thought outside of that think of when they think of the American dream. But yeah, to be fair, the American dream means different things to different people, and it very much does depend on who you are as a person and what you prioritize that you can see in America. That being said, however, the very last person who should be denouncing the idea of an American dream altogether is Captain America, because he's Captain freaking America. And if he were to denounce such a thing, he should do it in his own goddamn voice and not the voice of an academic screed that some hack writer wanted to act like a professor and put in his mouth.
right.
But that's not really material to the topic at hand. So back
Right.
to the article and DC's
Um,
own version of this hyper contentious gobbledygook.
right. Okay. Brian Azzarello has a reputation for taking superhero comics and pushing all sorts of bat buttons, from the infamous Batman Batgirl rooftop scene in the animated version of Killing Joke. Huh.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Or Batman Damned in all its glory. I can see why I don't. I had a feeling I wouldn't like this guy. I'm now getting the feeling of it.
Mm.
Actually,
Um.
those are things I
Mhm.
really don't care about, to be fair. So I'm more just indifferent with Mr.
Right.
Azzarello here.
Yeah. But
Um,
the takeaway I get from that is he can't think of a way to tell a good story without being quote unquote controversial, which is the laziest kind of writing. To you should be okay. Your goals as a writer should be more than just to get some portion of your audience to look at the page and say, "Oh, how dare he," or "Oh no, you didn't," or however you want to put it.
there was still more I needed to read there.
Okay, go for it.
He took on Rorschach in Before Watchmen, as well as co-creating 100 Bullets from DC Vertigo and Moonshine from Marvel Comics. And he now has some new buttons to push. Okay, so yeah, he's very much a writer who only works on creating controversy. Got it.
Yeah, the the okay. If you have to resort to pushing buttons to tell a good and compelling story, then you are a hack. It is the lowest form of writing. Not saying you can never push buttons. Not saying there's never a good reason to push buttons. But if your defining characteristic is just I make my audience squirm and feel uncomfortable and have conflicting conversations about things. If that's all you got going, then you sir are a hack. I know many writers better than you. Okay, brainstormer. That was your cue.
I'm not saying it because I'm not like professional because I haven't really published any of my works yet, so I can't really say it.
Oh, you and your humility.
That's not humility. It's like legitimately, I can't really compare myself to Mr. Azzarello on the fact that I haven't actually released any work yet. So I can't call myself a writer, so to speak.
Fair, I suppose. But
Well,
still,
professional writer.
when he successfully gets something published, what he publishes will mop up the floor with you, and I can say that because I'm his friend, and I can, I can sing his praises even if he won't. So yeah.
Right. Okay, so we have a comment panel here with a helicopter saying I took a shit on the speaker of the house's desk. Okay.
Okay,
Uh,
let me attempt to explain what he thinks he is doing, and then explain why it doesn't actually work. He is putting the memes and the talking points of people who would have supported the protest in on January 6th in the mouth of a villain, unexaggerated or unstrawmanned, because he thinks that those things are already inherently wrong-headed, and it's not obvious right away because of the thing that we just read out isn't one of the things that actually deals with the substance of the matter. But when we get into the character actually talking about the substance of the matter, it'll become very obvious that the thing that they're vilifying is not a wrong thing, and this is the fundamental issue. Mr. Azzarello is an elitist cunt who genuinely does see any degree of dissent against the government or dissent against the established order as inherently wrong and villainous, so he has no problem having a villain say those things, no matter how truthful and honest those things might be.
right. Okay. Cast members include Red Hood, Harley Quinn, Firefly, Silver Banshee, a number of new characters, and one very familiar figure who, it seems, was part of the January 6th insurrection on the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., and seems to have made his mark. Okay, before you say something, Dalton, mind if I kind of with a few things?
No, go ahead.
Yeah. Two things. One, Red Hood is an anti-hero, and I don't think has ever really been arrested, to be fair.
As far as
So,
I know, no.
yeah,
Yeah.
to my knowledge as well. He, yeah, so him being part of the Suicide Squad makes no sense. Harley Quinn, as I mean, I don't like what they really done with Harley Quinn, like other forms of media, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
but in the comics, she's become kind of a surrogate, a pseudo member of the Bat Family anti-hero.
Right.
But it's Harley Quinn, Suicide Squad makes sense. She's a mainstay there.
Yeah, and what with the movies and everything, Suicide Squad storylines for the foreseeable future are going to be rendered as the Harley Quinn show,
Right. Also,
regardless.
why is it mentioned? Why is it called an insurrection? Because it was really just a protest. I mean, they got out of hand, from what I remember, but
Because, okay, as far as I understand it, in these people's minds, none of the rioting that went on for like the last 6 months or so of 2020 qualifies as rioting because the people doing the rioting were doing it for the right reasons and fighting for the right causes, therefore they were just protesting. But because the people on January 6th were presumably doing it for the wrong reasons, no matter how peaceful they were compared to those 6 months of, people looting and burning down buildings and shit, no matter how peaceful the January 6th protesters were, or how much of an outlier the moments where it got out of hand was, um, they're actually worse than a riot, and in fact cross over into an insurrection. And also, all those other protests just attacked capital cities or major cities, whereas the insurrection, quote unquote, happened in Washington. That makes it spookier because reasons.
Okay.
That, as far as I can tell, that is the most consistent rationale that anyone has yet given me. Um,
And
as to why the riots of 2020 cannot be called riots, but the January 6th fiasco is not only a riot, but in fact an insurrection, even though it was more peaceful than half the riots that took place previously,
okay, fair enough.
and also lasted much less time. But that's a different story.
All right. Moving on, or do you still have anything to say?
Oh, go ahead.
All right. Then another comment panel here is: wait, you were part of the insurrection. Then going down. And not just a random new character, but someone who has a long history in DC Comics and is seen as quite a political figure. God damn it. And the panel here says, "You asked me how I got arrested. Well, it was by leading the charge, buddy. Garbage that's been happening in this country. It's fucking lawless. All the while we're being regulated how to think." I mean,
Okay, and this is exactly what I was saying earlier. Present me with the lie that was just said there, because I can't find one. I've reviewed this article twice now, and I have yet to interpret that as anything but an objectively true statement. But it's coming out of the mouth of a villain, therefore one assumes the writer thinks that that is an inherently extreme or inherently morally wrong statement to even make, or an inherently stupid thing because he's a villain who's, willingly confessing to his crimes as though he's proud of it, which is kind of a stupid thing.
I'm part of the Suicide Squad, so it doesn't really matter.
Well, yeah, but I think this is supposed to be funny. I think this is supposed to be the character that's speaking is so stupid that he'll just willingly confess to something that for some reason the other villains are going to be considering worse than all the other crimes. Because this is something else I've noticed. The villains that the writers like to frame as semi-anti-heroes, they all have the approved perspective. Like that's why all the other characters are reacting to him shocked and horrified, because he doesn't understand that in their minds what he did on January 6th is worse than apparently everything else they could have done. So yeah, I think this is supposed to be funny because the character is obliviously confessing to something that is bad even by villain standards, apparently. I think.
Right. Okay.
It's not successfully funny because it's wrong-headed and doesn't make any freaking sense, but it, I think, is trying to be funny, or at least shocking.
Moving on.
Yeah.
Okay. Wild Dog, or Jack Wheeler, who first appeared in 1987, published by DC Comics and was created by Max Allan Collins and Terry Beatty. If I said the name wrong, Mr. Beatty, I'm sorry. Indeed, Wild Dog was not only part of the insurrection, but he led it. Probably wearing horns, the comic book isn't clear. Wild Dog uses all sorts of familiar talking points, painting himself as a villain and mocked when he claims that he was oppressed. Anyway, before you do, may I?
Yes.
All right. Well, one thing, Wild Dog is legitimately an anti-hero. Like, he was created as an anti-hero. And granted, the only thing I really know about Wild Dog is from the Arrowverse when I was watching those episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And it is another character by the name of Renee. something. Can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
But if I remember correctly, hold on, let me look this character up. But yeah, he is he's legitimately just a street level vigilante. Um, one sec. Um, because, okay, so I'm looking at fandom.com for Jack Wheeler, Wild Dog, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a quote here that says this: "I'm against anybody who uses violence to force their beliefs, their will on the rest of us." Right? Um, anyway, vigilante in the Quad Cities, peaceful metropolitan area that targets. Yeah, star athlete. Sorry, I'm trying to do a quick read here, so I have.
Right. But okay, so assuming that quote comes from the character, even if I bought into your premise that January 6th was some terrible travesty against justice or democracy or whatever, even if that were the case, the character you put it in the mouth of has a principled history of nonviolence. So even in the context of your worldview, where January 6th was the worst thing ever, but the 6 months prior, where Antifa and Black Lives Matter were burning down buildings left and right, periodically on and off for weeks on end, even assuming your worldview where those people did nothing wrong, but January 6th was basically another 9/11. Assuming your worldview is right, you should have picked a different character to put this in the mouth of, because this character has a principled stance against um, violence, if I'm interpreting the quote correctly.
Right. Yeah, he's also his girlfriend. He became Wild Dog because of a targeted attack against his girlfriend, who was the daughter of a Chicago mob boss. She died. Ruthless vigilantism is mentioned, so he did take out. He was basically like a Punisher copy,
Aha.
which makes sense.
Yeah, that was sort of what I had expected was the case.
Yeah, but again, and like, I don't know, it's weird to me that they're now just putting anti-heroes on the Suicide Squad when it really is just supposed to be a team of supervillains playing anti-hero.
Yeah, but Brainstormer, thing you have to keep in mind is most of those characters are disposable cannon fodder for the writers. They need characters to pad out the scenes, and the writers don't know and don't care about the history of the characters. So if they can vaguely be um, seen as like anti-heroes or villainous or whatever, or edgy, then they go on the Suicide Squad. Or it's probably even more fundamental than that. The um, artist was probably just told, draw in random characters that kind of make sense to put here, because again, to call back to what I was talking about earlier, for the foreseeable future, um, the characters that matter for the sake of the Suicide Squad are Harley Quinn, maybe Deadshot, and basically any of the ones that made a good impression in the movies, mostly, probably.
Captain
Because the
Boomerang.
writers being tasked with writing this don't know, don't care, and can't be arsed to do research.
Right. Okay. Moving on.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Okay. So another comment panel says, "Oh, does that word belong to you too? I'll put it on the list. Can't say this. Can't think that. Fuck. What the fuck happened to freedom in this country, Kimosabe?"
Again, provide for me the lie, because
Yeah.
the
Like,
lie is not presenting itself there.
I mean, to be fair, if they're technically all villains put on the Suicide Squad, none of them are actually right in their beliefs. To be fair.
Right, but that's the thing. But that's the thing. This character is saying like objectively true shit, but because he's a villain, we as the reader are supposed to internalize those things as inherently wrong. And more than just inherently wrong, because he is willingly confessing to all this shit, and all the other villains are looking at him like he's gone nuts. Um, we're supposed to view him as not just terrible, but also stupid enough to be proud of his terrible actions. Because in the writer's mind, that's you and me. That's people we know and people we respect. That he's supposed to be the surrogate for people like us, because we will call out things like being unable to say a certain thing because someone will be offended, or we will point out the fact that freedom of expression is being counter mandated by cancel culture and things like that, and that makes us apparently equivalent to a villain, and a villain so idiotic he would willingly confess in public to his crimes.
Well, to the Suicide Squad, which I don't think would be his friends.
Right, but remember, they're also reacting to him as though his rap sheet is the worst rap sheet in the room. And mind you, Harley Quinn is in that room. So, according to the writer, or at least in his mind, or at least within like the comedic setup of the scene, being involved and being proud of January 6th is both the worst thing a room full of mass murderers could imagine, and it's also the stupidest thing the reader is supposed to be able to imagine, because he's obliviously confessing to it, even though everyone around him is reacting like it's the worst thing.
I don't.
So yes, you and I apparently make supervillain status now.
Okay.
Which
Whatever.
for one of us kind of makes sense because hi, but for you that's just he doesn't know you at all. That's funny.
Whatever. After his first miniseries, Wild Dog, before becoming a feature in Action Comics Weekly, Jack Wheeler would return as a supporting character in Infinite Crisis, and Cave Carson has a cybernetic eye in 2016. Even though he described Cave Carson disdainfully as a registered Democrat. And in 2017 DC Rebirth comic, Green Arrow comic, a gang named the Wild Dogs is a libertarian militia inspired by some nut in the Quad Cities who attack a Native American settlement. Okay, that's just genuine. That's just genuinely shifting and changing a character to match your fucking narrative.
Yeah. Assuming that the bit of research Brainstormer just did is right, and that quote about nonviolence it came from the character.
No, it wasn't. It
This doesn't.
wasn't violent. It wasn't about nonviolence.
Wasn't it like I'm against anyone who would use?
Hold on, let me go back up.
Okay.
Against anybody who uses violence to force their beliefs, their will, on the rest of us.
Yeah. So nonviolence.
But I mean, the
Yeah,
guy is a ruthless vigilante, so there's a bit of a hypocrisy.
right, but he's kind of fighting fire with fire. But in principle, he's a guy who is motivated by nonviolence, and he gets psychically offended when anyone else tries to enforce their beliefs, will, or ideas down someone's throat using violence. So once again, irony of ironies, which could have been resolved by about 5 seconds of research, you went and you put the January 6th screed in the mouth of a character who is principally in favor of nonviolence. So much so that he's willing to dish violence out to people he views as violating it.
It's kind of
And you
peacemaking.
fundamentally changed a character who is rooted in nonviolence.
It's kind of Peacemaker-like, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. But
Man,
Peacemaker
so,
has to be in the movie, so they couldn't throw him under the bus with this.
well, no, yeah, it's just like Peacemaker's whole belief system is he cherishes peace with all his heart, but he'll kill anyone to achieve it.
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it doesn't make sense from an actual logical perspective, but it makes sense for the character.
Well, and also in terms of, if your back's against the wall and someone's about to kill you, pacifism doesn't really make as much sense in that instance. Like,
Fair enough.
so somebody puts a gun in your face, then it doesn't matter how pacifist you are, you're justified in self-defense.
Mm-hmm. All right. Moving forward.
Yeah.
Okay. A virtual wild dog appeared in the TV series Arrow, portrayed by Rick Gonzalez as a former Navy SEAL who saw his wife Laura shot in their home by her dealer and lost his daughter Zoe to Child Protective Services. This led him to become a vigilante before he is eventually brought in to Team Arrow until the FBI tries to turn him against Oliver Queen. He eventually retires, though there are other versions of him across the multiverse. I don't have anything to say to that.
Yeah. It's mostly just character background, which I'm assuming Rich, maybe you looked this up on Wikipedia, because he clearly didn't catch what we just caught of him being, principally in favor of nonviolence. So, because if he had, he might have pointed out this is kind of contradictory to the character.
Suicide Squad get Joker #1 begins publication in August, and I understand this may be one of its minor headlines for DC Comics. I will say this though, the cover looks cool. It's probably the only thing I can say that is actually worth.
It's alright, yeah. It's not bad.
Well, it's like the only nice thing I could probably say of the comic, to be honest. Okay, so I guess descriptions of the comics themselves, which is like the end of the article. Makes no sense.
Rich, you've wasted my time. You tried to defend someone putting the mentality of a January 6th protester in the mouth of a villain on purpose to make anyone who would be vaguely politically aligned with them feel like the villain. And not only that, but you didn't even go off on a long existentialist screed about how this is significant for comics or something. Like,
probably isn't, because it isn't.
If you can't, Rich, if you can't at least, if you can't not be stupid, can you at least put more effort in, please?
That's asking a lot.
Yeah, because like, I know you're a willfully ignorant shitraker. Everyone knows you're a willfully ignorant shitraker, Rich. But we at least enjoy pointing and laughing at you. Can you not at least give us more material?
Shall we?
Yeah.
Suicide Squad get Joker #1 of 3. Writer Brian Azzarello. Artist Alex Maleev. Matt Hollingsworth. CA. I don't know what CA stands for. That's cover artist, I think.
Mm.
No, no, both are okay. Alex Maleev and Matt Hollingsworth are artists. Cover artist is Alex Maleev. Okay. Critically acclaimed and best-selling author Brian Azzarello, Batman Damned, and Eisner Award-winning art legend Alex Maleev, Batman No Man's Land. Huh. They still have good art. So.
Mm.
Collaborate for the first time in this 3-issue oversized, prestigious plus format Suicide Squad series pitting Red Hood, Harley Quinn, Firefly, and more of DC's most villainous criminals against the Joker. Again, Red Hood, he is technically a criminal, but I don't think he was ever truly arrested.
Yeah, and wait, this is supposed to be a prestige book, so this is you putting your best foot forward and giving the people what you think they want or what you think they will find the most compelling.
Right.
I can't decide whether that makes me sad or angry the most.
Okay. When Task Force X's Amanda Waller sets her sights on Batman's greatest foe, she enlists the Dark Knight's former partner, Jason Todd, to track down the Clown Prince of Crime and put an end to his mountain raid of terror.
Okay, that makes sense and does sound like something Amanda Waller would do. Well done.
Wait, retail is $7 for this book? I mean, it's prestige. Okay, fine.
But still, like, 2 of those and you could buy a trade.
Yeah, the regular pricing now is bullshit.
Yeah, if trades are less money than single issues, or very nearly, or less money than 2 single issues put together, why would anyone buy the individual issues at that price point? Especially when the material they're getting is not worth $7 of material.
I mean, read the other two.
No, not really.
Okay.
It's not even really rich anymore. It's just the editorial stamp.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, while the next one starts to load, that was kind of a letdown.
Again, Rich, if you can't avoid being stupid, could you at least put more effort into your stupidity?
Yeah.
Then again, the last time he did that, I ended up almost weeping. So, meh.
Okay. Next one's loaded. This one might get you weepy. Or just really angry.
I'm hoping for the second one, but God only knows at this point.
Again, Dalton sent this to me. This is from ScreenRant.com, although this does look to be an archived version of it. Marvel just accidentally destroyed Doctor Strange's origin. This is by Bug Norman. This was published July 9th, 2021.
I'm really just hoping that rumor I keep hearing about them killing him off is true, just so they can't ruin him anymore.
They'll bring him back. You know that, right?
Like, I know, but hopefully it won't be until shit is sorted out a little bit over there. Because, like, at this point, as much as I love the character, he has been beaten down and beaten down and beaten down by his own writers so badly that I really, it's like the old Geller like syndrome of like, at some point if you love something you really just got to take it out back and shoot it in the head so that it doesn't suffer anymore.
Right. Okay. So magic has been around for a long time in Marvel Comics, but one character just proved that Doctor Strange may have wasted years learning his magic. Oh God. That was a subheader, by the way.
I know. I read through this one just because I didn't want to get mad at the clickbaity title just because it's a clickbaity title, I wanted to actually like look into what the argument was, and I'm like, on one level I'm annoyed, but on another level I'm just like,
Disappointed.
yeah, it's just like when I posted about this on Twitter, I um said long and annoyed sigh, and I think that's mostly where I'm at with it at this point. It's just like
Okay.
I can we'll just get into it. It's I'll explain my issues and my counter arguments for my issues as we go.
Right. Spoiler warning for Reptile number 2 ahead. Huh.
If I gave a damn, that might mean something, but I don't, so it doesn't.
It kind of means something to me because I kind of watched the Superhero Squad show growing up.
Oh god.
You know, when you're a kid, it actually looks fun. Man,
Fair, but even then, around that same time, we had like Spectacular Spider-Man. Even the Drake Bell Ultimate Spider-Man wasn't that bad.
I agree to disagree.
I mean, it was weird that they kind of turned him into quasi Deadpool, but I will take quasi Deadpool Spider-Man over insane, flamboyant Doctor Strange and scratchy voiced Doctor Doom. Although to be fair, Doom was the best part of that show.
My favorite episode was the Beta Ray Bill one. It's funny to me. I don't know. But that's because I like Beta Ray Bill. Anyway, moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're doing one on one tangent. We're not doing another yet.
Mm-hmm.
After an accident
Irreparably.
Motherfucker! Like, I know the word. Can't fucking vocalize it. Irreparably. Fuck it. Moving back. Damaged hands. Doctor Strange went on a long and dangerous journey to study magic in an effort to heal himself. His time studying with the Ancient One was fraught with danger and took months of dedicated practice. However, Marvel has casually brushed aside all of his efforts as wasted time in one singular issue of Reptile.
Okay, minor quibble, and this is something you would know if you were going off the comics and not the movie, but he didn't travel the world to study magic. He traveled the world looking for a means to heal his hands, and it just so happened that magic was the means to do so. And the reason it took him so long to figure that out was because he spent many of those intervening years looking into various obscure medical techniques and miracle cures and such. And so much was he devoted to the notion of medicine that when the Ancient One initially offered to teach him so that he could heal his hands, Strange almost walked out and would have walked out were it not for a snowstorm snowing them in, and also Mordo being a dickhead. But that's a different story. And obviously I'm oversimplifying, but point being, he didn't. The reason he didn't just sit at home and look it up is because he wasn't looking for magic to begin with. He was looking for a means to heal his hands, and by the time he was at his wit's end enough to give something like the Ancient One's mysticism a try, he was already in freaking Tibet, and he was already out of money and out of options. It was basically his back was against the wall. And they kind of did that in the movie, but as with so many things, it was sort of half-assed in the movie. So just to fill in the part that you should actually know, because you should have actually been basing this on the comic and not the movie. Yeah, the reason why he went all the way to Tibet for it was because it was a very last desperation move, and he was unwilling to consider such out-of-the-box solutions before that. But anyway, moving on. Unless he left.
Sorry, I had to stretch my legs a bit.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been sitting in this chair for like hours. So,
Uh-huh.
yeah. Also, I went to get a drink. I felt like I needed one. Yes, it's root beer. We finally have some.
Aha.
Yeah. Anyway, I got nothing to say. Dalton's a Doctor Strange fan. I've made a
Yeah.
Doctor Strange, but I haven't really used him lately. So,
Yeah. And to be fair, he did ask the go-to mystic on his speed dial for help with figuring that out. So there's that.
you're the only mystic on my speed dial. So,
I would be sort of amazed if it were any different, to be honest with you.
like I actually kind of want to try and find some other mystically inclined friends, just to spite you for that.
I I was gonna say I would feel a little bit cheated on if you tried that.
No, I probably wouldn't actually. To be fair,
Besides, most practitioners you're gonna meet are probably gonna be new agey fluffy bunny types, and I expect you would find those people insufferable. Like you'd be polite about it because you're you, but you'd find them insufferable.
bold of you to assume that I would care enough about their feelings to be polite.
Yeah, because you have a freaking Superman or Captain America style moral compass. I know you. You get uncomfortable by even the notion of just bragging about yourself. So if it were truly a matter of offending someone and just walking away, or at least being nice to them and then walking away, you'd pick the second one.
Never floats boat, buddy. Anyway, yeah, moving on. Okay. Magic has been an integral part of Marvel Comics for decades, with characters like Dr. Stephen Strange at the center of it. After studying obsessively with the aforementioned Ancient One, he abandons his former life and eventually becomes the Sorcerer Supreme, a position of respect and power, when really all the man was looking for was some healing magic. Sorry.
Okay, you complete like okay. I'm gonna now go on a fanboy screed even more so than I usually do. Because this is stuff that you would have to actually know and love the character to understand.
Right. Okay.
So
Once
I'm not gonna get angry with you, writer of the article, for not understanding it. But the thing about Stephen Strange is that his accident was not random. It was not an accident in like the grand existential scheme of things. Because you see, Stephen Strange was born a natural healer. But because he grew up in the Western, scientifically inclined world of, originally 1963 or so, that natural inclination towards healing and self betterment was applied to Western medicine, which led to him eventually becoming corrupt because of how the medical system works and turning him into a bitter asshole because he wasn't fulfilling his life's actual potential. And so the universe shook him out of his comfort zone by going, okay, fuck you. You are far too arrogant, so we're going to take everything you have away from you and make you do it the hard way. And the reason he stayed as a sorcerer is because he ended up becoming more fulfilled and his life having more meaning as a sorcerer than it did when he was a doctor. Because when he was a doctor, he didn't view his job as healing people. He viewed medicine only as a means to stroke his own ego and better his own position in life. It took the beat down by the universe that was his car accident and subsequent disgrace and wanderings to show him that he was unfulfilled and miserable, and to guide him towards actualizing his potential by teaching him mysticism and, in particular, mystical healing methods. Because as much as I will point out to you that Doctor Strange is a mystic or a sorcerer after his car accident, and people need to stop making doctor analogies with him, there is a connection between his role as a doctor and his role as a sorcerer. Namely, and the Ancient One on several occasions points this out to him, after he agrees to apprentice with the Ancient One, that Stephen Strange had a natural capacity to heal that was being misapprehended by the Western medical establishment, and therefore he was becoming bitter and cynical and self-aggrandizing. And it took the tragedy of his car accident, which was basically the universe telling him to fuck off, to put his life on a more fulfilling path for both himself and the universe at large. Which, again, you would know if you knew anything about the character. But you don't, so you miss the point. It's not a one-off. It's not just a one-time fix that he needed. It was an entire attitude adjustment. Stephen Strange is very much similar to Ebenezer Scrooge from A Christmas Carol or Jean Valjean. The car accident is the means by which the universe gets him to straighten up, examine his own failings, and fly right, but it is not the end point of what he needed. What he needed was to get his life on a more self-actualizing and fulfilling path, not only for himself, but for the universe. And he couldn't have done that if he had just walked into an occult shop, picked up a book on healing magic, studied just enough to maintain his hands, and then, went on about his merry way. Okay, now we can resume the thing.
Okay. Oh boy. Don't try to eat spaghetti after you're already full.
I don't particularly like spaghetti, so that's
You
a
bastard!
In my defense, part of the reason I don't like it is I find it extremely hard to eat. So that might be why. Plus, I have enjoyed buttered noodles before. I just don't particularly like tomato sauce on them.
Still a bastard, though.
Well, I was a bastard before you even knew that. To be fair, I am your friend, the bastard. It is what I do.
Anyway, again, I got nothing to say. This is really more Dalton's thing than mine.
Mm-hmm. And believe me, if someone did something similar to Spider-Man, I would be letting Brainstormer. I would be sitting here letting Brainstormer rail for however many hours he felt like it. So this is what we do as friends. We give therapy to each other occasionally in the form of angry rants.
Okay. Anyway. In Reptile number 2 by Terry Blas, Ined Baum, Victor Lazaba, and Carlos Lopez. If I said those names wrong, I'm sorry. I just don't know how to read names unless they're said to me first, like pronounce them.
Yeah.
It has been revealed that Humberto Lopez's young cousin Ava has also begun studying magic as a way to defend herself. She uses magic now only to protect her superhero cousin and nearby citizens, but it is also able to open a portal to another universe after very little practice.
Okay, so I know where they're going with this, but I just want to point this out. You guys know how often people like us complain about Mary Sue's? So question, why do you keep making Mary Sue's?
Oh, it gets worse. I just read the next couple sentences.
I know where, like I said, I know where it's going, but I just wanted to throw that out there before we even get into all the things that are wrong with the ins and outs of the hows and the whys. It's just a matter of, have you never heard of struggling for things? Like, just not saying everything needs to be a Herculean struggle, not saying things can't be easy or you can't have a hidden talent or anything, but at some point, it might be useful for a character to actually like work on things. Then I don't know, maybe there is like a massive montage of her learning how to get shit accomplished in the comic. I'm just going off of what the writer is saying, but yeah. Barring something like that, like a montage of her working to get the spell down, this is somewhat annoying just from a writing perspective. You don't even want to get me started on the how it's annoying from a magical perspective, or we will be here forever.
Yeah. You think Dalton's long-winded when it comes to politics? God, you've not seen him when he talks about magic.
Yeah. Get the practicing occultist on the topic of magic. I dare you. I swear to
Sometimes I
God.
regret it. Sometimes I regret it when he's helping me write stuff.
But you usually benefit from it, so
Yeah,
sure.
I do, but goddamn, man, it's like trying to talk to a stereotypical jock about theoretical physics. No, a toddler about theoretical physics. Okay.
Well, I mean, I was interested in theoretical physics at the age of 9,
A
so
regular toddler. I can't believe I have to be that specific. A regular average toddler. Like you're trying to explain theoretical physics to a regular average toddler.
Mhm. In my defense, it's usually just because I don't know how far I need to go to explain things and how simple I need to break things down before he tells me.
You're right. Fair enough.
And then it takes me a minute to like to, for lack of a better word, dumb it down.
You don't do a
Because
bad job. You don't do a bad job. You just you like to talk.
well, I mean, it is something I've devoted 15 years of my life doing, so kind of.
I know. Anyway, that was a tangent. Ava did. In contrast to Strange's obsessive focus and study in the mountains of Tibet, Ava did what any kid her age would do. She Googled it.
Okay.
Actually, let me read a little bit more because I feel like we're missing.
Okay, yeah. Finish that thought or that sentence or whatever or that that
Yeah.
thing, and then I will.
The fact that she was able to use the internet to learn magic shows not only her tech savviness, but also her natural talent in the magic arts. Not really, to be honest, on either account. Because I've Googled some magic stuff I really don't fucking understand, but it's not that hard. I mean, you can literally Google anything these days.
Yeah, and
Like I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just want to bring up an example.
mm-hmm.
I think there was just a conversation you and I had once, and I was just curious. So I Googled up Enochian sigils or symbols.
Uh-huh.
Got it there. Still don't understand the fucking language at all.
Yeah, because I mean,
Well, to be fair, my search was very brief, and I wasn't like taking notes on it or anything.
right, but Enochian, like, okay, this is Dalton's biggest tip for all of the wannabe magic users out there. Don't start with the new agey stuff you'll find at any random bookstore, because that stuff will waste most of your time and get you into a bunch of irrelevant fluff bunny shit. But also, don't think you can just open up a grimoire and be, summoning up spirits in about 5 seconds. Because the thing about grimoires is grimoires were written at a time when most knowledge was supposed to be memorized. Like people nowadays use the concept of the mind palace as kind of an edgy sort of "ooh, look how smart this character is" beat. But back in the day, when the written word was less common and when recording methods in general were not really available, how you chose to remember things is you memorize something, however you chose to memorize it, and then you put it in your mental schema. So a grimoire was everything that was everything a magic user or a wannabe magic user couldn't manage to memorize or needed to remind themselves of enough that they actually had to go out and write it down. Keep in mind that for most of human history, writing was fucking expensive. Like, you actually had to make the paper from scratch, you had to make the ink from scratch, you had to know how to write in the first place, which was a difficult task in particular the Middle Ages, and on and on and on and on. So it's basically the equivalent of buying a printing press every time you needed to make a new book. So a grimoire is all the parts of a working, which is what those of us in the industry refer to as like high ritual magic spells, as everything you needed for a working that couldn't be memorized or you didn't know off the top of your head, and you had to be well off enough that you could afford to write it down in the first place. It's a little bit like, imagine you didn't know anything about how to cook, and your first book you choose to learn cooking from is a textbook from the Cordon Bleu cooking school, or something released by like the Michelin star group or something. Or if you had never learned math before and your first impulse was to go right from basic addition to like multi-dimensional calculus. That's what people do when they just go off the cuff with no background or training or understanding of how magic functions at all, and go right into grimoires. Do not, for the love of God, just randomly start with grimoires. It will not go well, and either it won't work because you don't know how to work magic in the first place, or it will only half work because you managed to get the attention of something and that thing is now very pissed off at you because you didn't do it correctly. Those are basically your only options. Either it completely craps out because you don't know how to make a spell work to begin with, or it works just enough to fucking be dangerous. So yeah, don't start with the basic fluffy bunny shit you'll get at bookstores, and don't start with grimoires. You have to kind of find somewhere in the middle that actually explains the ins and outs of how magic works, but also does so in a practical and usable way instead of just nebulous fluff bunny woo. And if you don't know the actual mechanics of how magic is supposed to function, don't look up spells, because trying to do spells without knowing how magic works is a little bit like trying to get an engine to work without the ignition, or without fuel. Yeah. Sorry. Moving forward.
I don't get how that really related to what I had said earlier with the Enochian sigils thing.
I just it was more going off of what it said in the article and the whole Googling thing of like, don't, the long and the short of it is, don't just Google spells. Don't think you're smart enough to just start with a grimoire randomly.
Oh, hey, bring up that TikTok thing. What happened?
Oh God.
No, it's a good It's obviously a good.
Yeah, this is probably the example of why learning magic via the internet is a bad idea. Couple of, was it?
I think it was last year.
Yeah.
I think it was last year.
Yeah, it was last year because when Yule rolled around, Mab went all crazy with the wild hunt on their asses. So anyway, last year there was a community of people on TikTok which refer to themselves as Witch Talk, which is basically a bunch of absolute amateurs who basically do just basically get spells off the internet or like try to walk each other through the basic fundamentals. Some of those people in that community called Witch Talk thought it was a good idea to try and hex the moon. Why they did this, apart from just trying to show that they could do it, I don't know. The problem being, the moon is kind of it's a fundamental fixture in magic. Trying to hex the moon, and it is also a massive source of highly intuitive, highly subconscious oriented magic. So trying to hex the moon is a little bit like trying to burn down the sun with a candle flame. But irregardless, these people tried to do this. And naturally, any spirits that were tied to the moon in any significant way would be pissed off at that, and it would throw a bunch of things off of whack. The good news is they weren't good enough at casting, and it basically fizzled out because, like I said, you can't burn down the sun with a candle flame, and you can't really get a hex to stick to the moon because it is essentially a giant crystal, and it sort of drowns out anything you might throw at it. But after this, that same group of people, or maybe some people inspired by that same group of people, thought it would be a good idea to hex the Fae because, of course, the Fae were not happy the moon was being hexed. And this makes about as much sense as walking into like 1970s New York and trying to whack the dawn. Basically, it's basically like trying to go up to Vito Corleone in the Godfather movies and bitch slapping the fucker. And predictably, the Fae, being the immortal, tricksy, honor-bound beings that they are, the forces of nature that they are, a bunch of what are referred to occasionally as sprites or the little folk ended up dying as a result of this hex, even though the hex itself wasn't all that powerful. And it royally enraged, according to some of the people I've talked to who work closer with Fae spirits, the Fae queens, up to and including Mab and Titania, or the beings typically referred to as Mab and Titania. And from what I hear, and again, this is kind of secondhand, so there is that little asterisk. But from what I hear, the 4 people that initially got it in their head to try this hex, 3 of them got, 3 of them got cancer, severe terminal cancer out of the blue, and one of them was in a debilitating car wreck. And the only reason the one of them that was in a debilitating car wreck was in the debilitating car wreck was because Titania decided to be kind about it, which goes to show you the difference between the approaches of Mab and Titania. Now, mind you, this saga is not really over yet, or I guess it might be now because we just passed Midsummer. But last year around midwinter, a bunch of fluffy bunny pagans randomly ended up dying because Queen Mab, the Queen of Winter, the Queen of Air and Darkness, she who is the Queen of the Unseelie Court of Fae, called in a favor to summon up the Wild Hunt, and, well, a bunch of people randomly died, because that's just what happens when that happens. Not sure what Titania did in response to this whole fiasco, but I don't think I really want to know after that. But yeah, point being, don't get involved in dangerous magic, kids. And if you do get involved in dangerous magic, make sure you don't learn the lion's share of what you're learning from the internet, because that will not go well at all.
Right. Yeah, we went on a tangent there. Well, you did.
Well, yeah.
Anyway, with the knowledge that magic is easily accessible without personal pilgrimage to the mountains makes Doctor Strange's backstory seem a little silly in retrospect. Dawn, before you do, may I offer something?
Yes.
One, you also keep in mind that Doctor Strange, 70s, right?
63.
Really?
Yeah,
Huh.
1963.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
With all the psychedelics, I kind of
Yeah.
assumed. Okay. Okay. Just learn something new every day.
Well, you have to keep in mind that a lot of that psychedelia was inspired by the likes of Doctor Strange. So much so that the Pink Floyd album "A Saucer Full of Secrets" has an image of Doctor Strange on it.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Right. Fuck. What was I?
1963.
Right. Yeah. Character in the 60s. Back then, there was no internet.
Right.
You literally had to do. I mean, there was still like some quote unquote modern stuff, you know, but magic in terms of like the Western or modern world was, how to put it, faded from
a niche market within a niche market.
Yeah, pretty much. Plus the personal pilgrimage thing was part of his kind of character arc to become the Doctor Strange we know.
Yeah, and again, the main reason why he ended up with the Ancient One at all is because by the time he was desperate enough to try spiritual healing or metaphysics, he was already strapped out and in Tibet. So there's no reason to assume he had to go there. That's just the place where he finally broke down and was willing to try magic. Who knows, if he had been willing to try magic from the get-go, he might have found Agatha Harkness or Monaco the Prince of Magic or some of the other major magic users in the Marvel Universe. But the place he was when he broke, or near when he broke, was Tibet. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And also, it's not the fact that magic is easy to find that bothers me here. Because, like, occult shops have existed for decades. So, like, if this character had gone into, like, a local occult shop, especially if she's in, like, New York or somewhere, and found a book or two on magic and started making it work because she was pretty good at it, that wouldn't bother me quite so much as the flippant nature of just Googling it. Because, like, movies about, like, teenagers who find occult shops and start experimenting with magic are a pretty solid tradition now, especially since The Craft, which was released, I believe, in 1996, year after I was born. So that wouldn't necessarily bother me quite as much as just the flippancy of Googling it. And I say that mostly because I'm familiar with the kinds of things that you find on the internet when you look for magic. And most of what you find is spells, which, unless you have a decent understanding of how magic actually functions, you can't make work. or you can kind of half make work, and you'll probably ruin yourself. Or you get fluffy bunnies say, that means I don't have to do any of the work. There are so many people like that because they have a psychic talent they don't have to pay. That's a whole nother issue. But yeah, that's not, yeah, most of what bothers me is A, how quickly she picks it up, and B, how just meaningless it's portrayed as. Because even in The Craft, where the main character did just go to a random occult shop and start experimenting with it, it was still treated like a fairly serious thing that you had to work at. Even though one of them was naturally stupidly OP for convenience of the movie. Moving forward.
Yeah, give me a sec, my. Yeah, I really shouldn't have eaten that bowl of spaghetti.
So what you're saying is it was a spicier meatball?
No, I just had too much spaghetti. Oh. I honestly might vomit. I don't know. Oh. Thanks to Marvel's Strange Academy, there's now a place for young people like Ava to learn magic with the help of skilled educators like Doctor Strange and others in his staff. The Electic group of students are shown to be all educated well with their magical education as primary focus, but the school itself and the attention it draws from other magical beings are not particularly safe for the student body. Much like Strange's epic journey, the school begins to seem equally redundant when a teenager can learn magic with relative ease in her LA bedroom. If Strange is a sorcerer supreme, then Ava is definitely in a place to step into her own as a powerful sorceress. Probably, actually not. Just gonna conflate her to that.
Yeah, it's mostly just she got lucky with the first couple of spells that she tried. That doesn't mean that she has this, world-ending talent. Now, granted, the good stuff, the stuff that you actually want when you get into magic, takes some time. But as long as you have a decent understanding of like the fundamental mechanics of magic, then some basic spells are as easy as pie. To the point that when you do start to get good, you can almost manage the minor stuff just kind of by thinking about it hard enough. Although that can be a pain in the ass because when your thoughts start to carry more weight than you're expecting them to carry, like when you have a random thought about someone and they randomly call you out of the blue or some shit, that shit gets creepy. Especially if you're going through puberty while it happens and you randomly think about someone who's across the cafeteria from you hard enough and they just randomly walk over to you randomly. I have no idea whatsoever why I picked that random example. Yeah, that's my own story for later, but that's yeah.
Right. Okay.
But point being, most of the good stuff is hard, and the stuff that's easy usually is worth a little bit less than you think. You think you're hot shit the first time, like luck spell or love spell works out for you, but that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Right. Anyway, the quiet little destruction of the validity of Strange's hard work feels like an even bigger punch in the gut, considering, thanks to the slippy nature of timelines in Marvel Comics, Strange's efforts to learn magic are relatively recent. To put his actions into perspective, Stephen Strange is like a man who wanted to learn how to learn to cook. Didn't know his local library had cookbooks and instead walked to the ends of the earth to find the greatest chef in the world to teach him. Ava got a library card, both learned how to make risotto. Okay, going before you do, I have a good thing to add to this.
Okay.
Ultimately, that's the thing though, with experience comes a greater understanding of what's the word? God damn it, I'm losing. Honestly, I would
Take
say.
your time.
Honestly, I would say with Doctor Strange's uh, journey around the world, it honestly gives him greater perspective and experience and knowledge of what he is to become. Ava's just
Yeah.
taking a very
He,
quick shortcut that honestly doesn't allow her to really grow and learn the value of magic.
yeah, it's what I was explaining earlier with the if Strange had just found the right healing spell back at the beginning of his origin and was willing to just take a chance on it, he wouldn't have gotten where he needed to go. He would have still felt bitter. He would have still felt unfulfilled. And in all honesty, he probably would have been driven insane because he probably would have gotten a little bit addicted to magic because he wouldn't have learned that basic self control thing. And to go within your cooking analogy and Jinx, because I also made a cooking analogy earlier, um, and I didn't read this far in the article, so I didn't know you were going to do it. So yay, Jinx. Um, it's a little bit like the girl who goes down to the library and then learns how to make risotto thinks she's hot shit because she learned something basic like how to make risotto, and then a 5 Michelin star chef walks into her kitchen and goes, "Oh, you think you know how this works?" Or better yet, better example. It's like if she thought she knew everything about how cooking worked, and then Alton Brown of Good Eats fame came in there and gave a lecture to her on like the literal mechanics of like molecular gastronomy or something. That's the difference. She may have a decent enough talent or a decent enough understanding to make the occasional one-off spell work, or to open a portal or whatever she can do. But that doesn't mean shit relative to somebody who literally once one shot at Galactus back when he was in his prime, um, or or who literally has bargained with the living embodiment of the universe itself on multiple occasions. And just like that in real world magic, since I've been kind of Easter egging it here and there throughout the discussion of this, it's a little bit like the difference between somebody who does know maybe a candle spell or a couple candle spells and somebody who does a full evocation into physical appearance of a demon from the Ars Gotia or an archangel. There's quite a bit of difference there, do you see? And neither of these things is the whole of magic, just like being able to make a baking soda volcano doesn't make you a theoretical physicist, or an engineer. And being able to be a mechanic doesn't make you an engineer either, necessarily. Now, granted, one of those is definitely closer to the whole of their area of study than the other, but neither of them still has the whole, unless you actually know about the mechanics of how these forces actually function. And that's the hard part about magic. Once you figure out how shit works and how to make shit work, then you can essentially pull most of what you need out of your ass by a simple Google search if you feel like it. But until you know how the spell actually works, somebody can give you every grimoire in the history of the arts, and you won't know shit, and you won't be able to make anything happen. That's the difference. Signed, a 15-year veteran of practicing the occult, who started when he was freaking 11. Thanks. And we're good. Next,
Okay.
if there is any more.
Yeah, there's a little bit left. It will certainly be interesting to see how Ava develops her magical skills. Incoming reptile issues, just like it will be interesting to see if she will ever cross paths with Doctor Strange. And that's the end of the article.
In all honesty, I kind of want her to try and seek him out, because I would have a lot more respect for this character if she took the little that she knows, realizes that she knows very little, and actually seeks out somebody like Doctor Strange. As long as they don't turn her into a uber gifted Mary Sue who can just like waltz into the Sanctum Sanctorum past all his wards or something. Which I have the worst feeling that if they do make her cross paths with him, they're gonna do that. They're gonna do the thing of like he's sitting there meditating and she just randomly pops in and starts begging to be taught by him, only to find out that she's better than him somehow. Because that's basically what they did with Riri Williams and Iron Man. So I don't put it past them at this point.
Anyway, we have.
But
okay,
on
well,
to
we have,
some good things.
right before we go. I have a few things in chat here because Batsy stuff was with us or is with us, I believe. There's a question for you. Is there a way I can learn a spell or any types of magic in order to be more successful than my tormentors or make my tormentors less successful than me?
Vengeance magic is probably not the place you want to go. There are spells for like success, prosperity, and abundance. In fact, there's some of the like the more nebulous your goal is, the easier it usually is to pull off. So like I off the top of my head, there's a book called The Big Little Book of White Spells, and I forget the author's name off the top of my head, but if you just look that up on Amazon, it's like a little yellow hardcover book. Any like basic bitch, or should I say basic witch, minor spell you might think of, like in terms of abundance, prosperity, love, all that business, you're probably going to find something in there that might be useful for you. And she does a half decent job of explaining how shit works. The author I'm thinking of is a practicing Santeria, so that's her. Santeria is basically the Mesoamerican equivalent to like voodoo, and that's a massive oversimplification, but it's like Mesoamerican or Hispanic folk magic essentially. That would be the direction I would point you in for something like that. Because stuff like that's not going to require a whole lot of effort, and it's still going to be effective enough that you're not going to you're not going to need to kill yourself to make it work. That would be my advice.
All right. Kind of cap off on a lighter, happier note. What kind of? This is the Marvel. This is something I sent. This is Marvel Studios' What If official trailer. I think I mentioned it before. I'm not like. I'm on the fence with Marvel now. It's more of I don't care anymore because I think it's kind of obvious.
They haven't given you a reason to care?
That, and also it just really seems like they don't have a plan going forward. Like Endgame was kind of supposed to be it, but because of it's the MCU, they feel like they're obligated to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this looks interesting, but you know, it could also like it's an anthology, so you don't have to worry about story being convoluted or stupid or whatever. But but you know, it's just again, it could fuck up, could make a mistake or something. I don't know. It's just at this point, Marvel's just kind of iffy to me. Personally,
For me, it depends on the project and it depends on how they use it. Because the
yeah, I
thing
mean,
with Marvel right now is they have so many things that could go so well if they do them right. But the problem is they could also go so wrong. And one of the things I've noticed with Marvel recently is they have this fantastic talent of coming coming just up to where they need to go and then pulling back. They snatch defeat from the very jaws of victory all the time. They come just up to the line and then they run in the opposite direction for some reason. And I don't know why they do it. I don't know why they can't just commit to their implicate, like they can't just commit to the outcomes of their universe and actually use them effectively for some reason.
Anyway, shall we banana?
We shall banana.
Banana.
Yeah, peace. I love peace. I'd be out of a job with peace. Do we know each other?
I got nothing. I mean, it makes sense. I like how they're pulling from the first Iron Man, obviously.
Yeah, it makes sense
Trailer.
to make alternates there because obviously that was where the MCU proper from our perspective started. So yay.
Killmonger is interesting divergence for this, I will admit.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's much rhyme or reason to these what ifs. Is my only complaint. Like normally, like you can see the moment where the timeline breaks off, and I don't really see how the timeline broke off here.
Tony wasn't captured by terrorists or had shrapnel into his chest. He was saved by Killmonger. And Killmonger, from the MCU perspective, is a soldier. I don't know if he was Marine or Ranger, but American military nonetheless. Although the thing is, the armor set that he has, I don't really get why he would have that. Because it's Black Panther. It's like his Black Panther suit. I mean, he's recognizable in it, sure, but why would he have that armor like in 2008? You know, that's my critique.
Probably, yeah.
Anyway, banana.
Yep.
Do we know each other?
Jinx.
Time. Reality. It's changeable.
Okay, wait, now, obviously that was something Doctor Strange related, so what just happened?
I think it was an alternate version of him where he didn't get into the car crash, because it looked like, well, it did a flash where it was the regular Doctor Strange.
Mm-hmm.
And then it looked, like he's in his car. Like, that's the same car he was in. So he must have not gotten the crash. But it does look like he still gets picked up, or is at least involved in the magic somehow. Which I'm curious.
That's what confuses me, because like, if he had never gotten his hands crushed and things, he probably never would have gone looking for magic. And even if the Ancient One had presented it to him, even when she did in the MCU, he was still thinking like she drugged me, she put psilocybin in the tea or something for a bit. So like, and before that, he was even like yelling at her, like pulling the usual like hard atheist argument of like we live in a purely material universe with purely indifferent like purely indifferent perspectives, so none of this matters. Derp.
I'm interested though to see how this works out.
I'm just glad he's still a sorcerer, to be honest with you, because that would be my biggest complaint if they did an alternate of Stephen Strange that turned out not to be a sorcerer. So as long as he winds up getting there somehow, I'm not really picky. And hell, maybe they'll do the Doctor Strange origin better in one of the alternate ones.
Right. Okay, so here we have Captain Carter. She really just should have been called Captain Britain when it made sense.
It would have, but see, I don't know if they're ever actually going to have the balls to use that character, so I don't know why they didn't. Unless that is implying that we're someday going to get a proper Captain Britain.
Then we have
Which-
it looks like Killmonger and his Black Panther armor is here, which is interesting. Gamora wielding
Okay.
Thanos' sword. Thanos' sword. Double sword thing.
Yeah, the Infinity Sword or what passed for it.
And then this was one I was kind of confused me and interested me, which was T'Challa as Star-Lord.
Oh, I saw a little bit of this one, or I heard about a little bit of this one. Instead of Peter Quill getting picked up by the Ravengers, it's T'Challa.
Yeah, I saw that in the.
I'm not sure if that means.
Trailer.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that means that in this universe, Ego is actually his father, or if Yondu just made a mistake.
It's interesting to see how different a personality he would have. Comparatively,
T'Challa as part Celestial would be cool, yeah.
I was talking more. Would he have Peter Quill's of the MCU personality, or would he still be a little more real? Because I want an actual goddamn real Star-Lord, like the like Prince Quill, badass like leader kind of Star-Lord. Like no offense to Chris Pratt at all. Like he's a good actor and stuff, and he plays.
Or James Gunn.
Yeah, it's just like I'm just kind of sick of all the, and I get it. It's MCU, and they do the quips and stuff. I get that. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's just there's a
Just
limit.
not everybody needs to be a man-child.
No. I mean, again,
Not everybody needs to be a pun-master man-child. Which hopefully they learn in Doctor Strange too. Not
Peter Quill, he wasn't emotionally mature enough. He's still growing and stuff. Makes sense. But it's just it's a weird pet peeve of mine.
Yeah, not every character needs to be the goofball. Some characters should be the straight man and the adult in the room.
Yeah. Anyway. Oh, we also have a young Thor here.
Cool.
That's a weird Avengers, I'm going to say. I mean, I'm not complaining. It's just, weird.
Well, I mean, it did always kind of bother me that apparently Thor and Loki and everybody have existed since the mythology happened, and yet their character development basically is limited to the time we see on screen, which doesn't make any. Like you would think just by sheer length of time, they would be more mature than they are at the start of Thor, but like, I guess not.
Kind of see, at least within the Thor movie, I can kind of get it because they're not technically by Asgard standards, they're not that old.
Mm-hmm.
So, late teens, early and mid 20s. If you know
Right.
if you know those people to be mature, so to speak.
fair play. In fact, I know 50-year-olds who still act that way. But
Yeah. Okay. Shall we?
yep, banana.
No.
Where you want to be? That's the question, isn't it?
Every universe is different. Each one unique.
I will say this: I like the art style.
Hmm.
Like you see 3D animation a lot these days.
Uh-huh.
This actually does have like a kind of reminds me of Spider-Verse, but a little less animatic, animated. You know,
Little bit, yeah. Hmm.
like it has that kind of. It looks like a comic book, like with like the colors and stuff on the backgrounds, and like how it's
It
shaded.
honestly reminds me. It honestly reminds me a little bit of like if Gendy Tartakovsky's Clone Wars, the animated one, was in 3D. That's kind of where the art's like. That's kind of the art style.
Right. So like, I guess the best example would be like, what if Gendy Tartakovsky and Dave Filoni worked on Clone Wars together?
Speaking of alternate universes, I want to exist. That
Yeah.
would
But yeah,
be so
I
badass.
like the style. Yeah, like it looks very comic book like, which is good, especially with like the colors and stuff.
It also looks very similar to the actual aesthetic of the MCU. So if they ever do decide to bring any of these versions of the characters into live action, which they might do, the transition won't be terrible.
Right. The thing is, I kind of hope that the What If series has a continuity within itself. You know. I mean, it kind of like the What If series has a continuity within itself.
Right. I also kind of wish they keep this version of the multiverse concept confined to like this, and then maybe Spider-Man 3, because of course they're doing Spider-Verse. Because as I've ranted on many an occasion, I don't need this kind of shit in Doctor Strange 2. What I need in Doctor Strange 2 is like gods and demons and elder gods and things like that.
But what I mean is like they have their own continuity with like the Captain Carter segments exist with like the events of like.
Oh, you want to keep revisiting some of them?
No, okay. What I mean is like, like I think we might see it later. What I mean is just like Captain Carter or Captain Britain. I guess I'm gonna call it Captain Britain, honestly.
Yeah, it makes more sense.
Right, like this shot we have right here. I like we have this World War II Iron Man armor and stuff. It's like I think it'd be really cool, like with like the events of like T'Challa being Star-Lord and stuff. Like this all happens in like its own universe, and we're just watching this. Even if it is a what if, this is all it's like what if this was the MCU we were watching, like in another universe.
Mm-hmm.
Because honestly, this looks like it's actually pushing boundaries. If that makes sense.
Who knows? Maybe it'll give the MCU proper some ideas.
Right. And what I mean by like pushing boundaries, like it's doing ideas that I think people have thought about but never really expected to see on screen.
Mm-hmm. I just hope they don't change. Like, I just hope they keep all of the what ifs within some semblance of making sense,
Yeah,
and
obviously.
don't just go, like what if what if all the people on Earth were suddenly turned into animals or something like that? That would be really stupid.
I don't think they're going to do that, to be honest.
Because with multiverse concepts, it's very tempting to do like a Rick and Morty style thing of like a universe where everyone is couches or phones or whatever. And I don't like it works for Rick and Morty because Rick and Morty is a comedy, but it wouldn't work for this.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to do that. I think you're what's the word? Yeah, I don't think they're going to do that because it doesn't really seem like it. Honestly, it does seem like it's like it has its own like continuity that it's building up. To be fair.
Yeah, and also because the way what ifs work in the comics is, you get a question of what if, and then there's a question that follows it. Don't be random for the sake of being random. Actually answer the question. Like, for example, like, what if Doctor Strange's hands were never broken? Follow that through without any. Don't be M. Night Shyamalan, I guess is what I'm saying. Don't feel the need to pile twists on top of twists just because lol so random. Actually play with the premise you're playing with if you're going to play with them. Like, as though they were legit serious universes unto themselves.
All right,
instead of just, like, jokes or one-off gags.
Okay.
Yeah, banana.
Shall we? Shall we, banana?
Yes, banana.
Hello? Oh.
Hello.
Yeah, I'm. Can you not hear me?
No,
Hello?
I can hear you. Yes. Hi.
All right. Yep. Banana.
Banana.
Slow down a little bit. There's a few people in the room that don't understand. Not me. I get it.
Captain Carter.
It looked like a dark Doctor Strange.
A bit. Yeah, I'm not sure where that's coming from.
I mean, it could be a Caecilius situation. I'm trying to find it. So brief. No. Oh, there it is. Yeah, he looks kind of looks Dormammu-ish.
Yeah, like maybe instead of signing up with the Ancient One, he signs up with Caecilius and the Zealots instead, or better yet, what if when he goes to bargain with Dormammu starts to like him, and he becomes the herald of Dormammu?
Yeah, it could work.
That would be the two easiest ways to go about, like, or possibly a third option. What if when Doctor Strange realizes the Ancient One draws power from the Dark Dimension, he gets pissy with her and starts to do it himself, and it corrupts him.
A lot of ways you could go about it, but he does look like a Doctor Strange of the Dark Dimension.
It very much seems like, what if Doctor Strange was Dormammu powered, essentially?
Yeah. They're always showing off Captain Britain a lot, which I'm not complaining about because I like Sharon Carter.
Peggy.
No, right, Peggy. God damn it.
Yeah, you said Sharon.
I'm sorry. I'm tired.
No. The only thing there, and I know it's a joke, so I'm not going to harp on it too much, but it's a little silly to have Zola go Shisa when he hears Captain Carter is coming, when he didn't do that when Captain America was coming. that's a little bit like too girl powery, maybe just a little bit. But again, it's a joke, so meh.
I honestly didn't get that, but whatever.
All right, banana.
Yeah, when banana.
I am the Watcher. I observe all that transpires here, but I do not, cannot, will not interfere. I guess I have to freestyle then.
What the fuck? I did not see that the first time I watched this trailer. Man's head in a jar.
I think that's supposed to be like a Howard Stark, but kind of a Walt Disney reference.
I'm not gonna ask. I don't want to know.
People have this crazy theory that when Disney died, they froze his head cryogenically, so that when they find a medical solution to whatever killed him, they can bring his head back. And I think the implication here is supposed to be that they did the same thing with Howard Stark's head.
I don't know if that is Howard Stark, to be honest, because it doesn't really look like Howard Stark. Also, Howard Stark's supposed to technically have Tony Stark, so he looks too young, is the thing. So
Yeah, I'm thinking this is one of those like they end up losing the war or something, and then they preserve Howard Stark or something.
I mean, there's Vision though. Like I can see Vision, like the green tights and stuff, and the red hands. So I'm not gonna guess anything because I don't really care and I don't want to know or guess. I want to kind of watch the show and see what happens.
I'm probably gonna skip around and watch certain episodes of What If. I'm probably not gonna watch them all.
It depends on what's there. Anyway, shall we?
Yep, banana.
Banana.
A Ravager never flies solo. I said never flies solo.
Is that some kind of catchphrase?
That Yaka arrow is still probably the coolest thing.
That could never operate it. I don't know how to whistle.
I can sort of whistle, but it takes me a second sometimes. Which would make it probably a pain in the ass.
I remember what happened with Guardians Volume 2. What happened when the guy tried to control it and ended up like skewering Drax.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather not take the chance.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, got 20 seconds left, shall we?
Yep, banana.
Banana.
Have me worried for a second. Journey to face the unknown and ponder the question. What if?
I gotta really say because I'm interested, but I'm not. I don't think it's gonna be like super groundbreaking or anything.
Some of the premises look interesting. Some of them I just feel like I can skip. But I'm grateful that it's coming out in August because that means it probably doesn't tie in very directly with Doctor Strange 2, which is good. Because I'm not against the alternate universe and parallel dimension version of, or parallel universe and alternate timeline version of multiverses. I just don't think they have anything to do with Doctor Strange. So wait, a few months or a few years, and give it to Ant-Man Quantumania, or when you bring in the Fantastic Four, have Reed discover it, because that's what Reed always does in the comics. So, leave the scientific multiverse to the science-based characters, and let the magicians deal with the magically inclined multiverse of, like, gods and demons and shit.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I guess that's pretty much it. for this stream. So with that, folks, I want to say goodbye, adios, aloha, wiedersehen, sayonara, peace, cheers, and
Fuck off with your multiverse.